One Piece is one of the biggest stories ever created. It has pirates, marines, sea monsters, talking animals, living skeletons, people who can turn into dinos, and a guy who fights with 3 swords, including one in his mouth. But underneath all that insanity is one massive mystery. What is One Piece? So if you've always wanted to understand the story but don't have hundreds of hours to watch the anime, I'm going to do something completely ridiculous. I'm going to explain the entire story of One Piece in 10 minutes. Our story begins with the greatest pirate who ever lived, Gol D. Rogers. Rogers did what no other pirate had ever done. He conquered the Grand Line, reached the final island, and became known throughout the world as a pirate king. But when Rogers was captured and brought to his execution, his final words changed the world forever. He told everyone that his treasure was still out there waiting to be found. That treasure became known as the One Piece, and with those words, thousands of pirates took to the seas. The great pirate era had begun. Years later, in a small village in the East Blue, a young boy named Monkey D. Luffy dreamed of becoming a pirate. Luffy idolized a powerful pirate named Red Hair Shanks and constantly begged to join his crew. Then one day, Luffy accidentally ate a mysterious devil fruit that turned his body into rubber. The problem? Devil fruit users lose the ability to swim, which is pretty inconvenient when your dream is to become a pirate. Later, when Luffy's life was threatened by a giant sea king, Shanks saved him but lost his arm in the process. Before leaving the village, Shanks gave Luffy his treasured straw hat. Luffy promised to return it one day after becoming a great pirate, and years later, Luffy finally set out to sea. Luffy's plan was simple: find the One Piece and become king of the pirates. There was only one problem: he didn't have a crew, so Luffy began collecting some of the strangest people he could possibly find. First came Zoro, a bounty hunter and swordsmith who dreamed of becoming the greatest swordsman in the world. He was incredibly strong, but could somehow get lost walking in a straight line. Next came Nami, a brilliant navigator and thief who claimed to hate pirates. Then Usopp, a sniper with huge dreams and an even bigger talent for lying about absolutely everything. And finally Sanji, a world-class chef searching for the legendary All Blue. Sanji also refused to fight with his hands because as a chef, his hands were only meant for cooking. Together, the small and completely chaotic crew began traveling across the East Blue, but before they could reach the Grand Line, Luffy would have to fight his first truly serious enemy. But before the crew could reach the Grand Line, Nami suddenly betrayed them and returned to a dangerous fishman pirate named Arlong. But the truth was much darker. When Nami was a child, Arlong took control of her village, murdered her adopted mother, and forced Nami to work for him because of her talent for drawing maps. Nami made a deal. If she could collect enough money, she could buy back her village's freedom. For years, she stole from pirates and saved everything she could. But when she finally had enough, Arlong betrayed her. With everything she had worked for gone, Nami finally broke down and asked Luffy for help. Luffy placed his straw hat on her head, turned around, and walked toward Arlong Park with his crew behind him. Luffy defeated Arlong, destroyed the room where Nami had been forced to draw maps, and freed her village. Nami was finally free, and then she finally joined the Straw Hat Pirates. After entering the Grand Line, the Straw Hat meets Princess Vivi, whose kingdom of Alabasta was being pushed toward a massive civil war. Behind everything was Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. While pretending to be a hero, Crocodile was secretly manipulating both sides of the war and searching for information about an ancient weapon called Pluton. Luffy tried to stop him and lost. Then he fought him again and lost. But Luffy has never been very good at staying down. In their final battle, Luffy finally defeated Crocodile and helped save Alabasta. Vivi stayed behind to help her kingdom, while the Straw Hat crew said goodbyes with her arms raised and the silent promise of friendship. But someone unexpected joined the crew, Nico Robin, and her ability to read the mysterious poneglyphs, which eventually would lead Luffy towards secrets the world government has spent centuries trying to hide. The Straw Hats' next adventure took them somewhere nobody expected, thousands of feet into the sky. After riding a massive ocean current called the Knock-Up Stream, the crew reached Skypiea, an island floating above the clouds. There they encountered Enol, a man with the power of lightning who believed he was a god. And again, almost anyone else, he probably would have been unstoppable. There was just one problem: Luffy was made of rubber. After defeating Enol, Luffy rang the legendary golden bell of Shendor, proving that the lost city in the sky was real. But hidden among the ruins was something even more important: another poneglyph, an evidence that Gol D. Rogers had somehow followed the same trail years before. The One Piece was no longer just about finding a treasure. The Straw Hats were slowly uncovering a history that someone had tried to erase from the world. After leaving Skypiea, the Straw Hats arrived at Water 7, and for the first time, the crew began to fall apart. Their ship, the Going Merry, was too damaged to continue sailing. Usopp refused to accept it, fought Luffy, and left the crew. Then Robin suddenly disappeared. It looks like she betrayed everyone, but the truth was much darker. Robin had spent her entire life running from the world government after they destroyed her home and everyone she loved. Now she was willing to sacrifice herself to protect the Straw Hats. Luffy refused to let that happen. The crew invaded Enies Lobby, stood against the world government, and burned its flag. Then Luffy asked Robin what she truly wanted, and for the first time, Robin screamed that she wanted to live. The Straw Hats rescued her, escaped Enies Lobby, but the victory came with one final loss. The Going Merry had reached the end of its journey. The crew said goodbye to their first ship before Frankie joined them and built their new home, the Thousand Sunny. The Straw Hats continued their journey and eventually reached Thriller Bark, where they met Brook, a musician who also happened to be a living skeleton. After defeating the warlord Gecko, Brook joined the crew, but soon after everything changed. At the Sabri Archipelago, the Straw Hats encountered enemies far beyond their strength. One by one, Bartholomew Kima made every member of the crew disappear. For the first time, Luffy couldn't save his friends. Then he received even worse news. His brother Ace had been captured and was going to be executed. Luffy raced to save him, breaking the underwater prison Impel Down before joining a massive war at Marineford. The Marines gathered their strongest forces while Whitebeard and his entire fleet attacked to rescue Ace. Against all odds, Luffy reached his brother and set him free. For one moment, it looked like they were actually going to escape, but Ace was actually killed protecting Luffy. Shortly afterward, Whitebeard died as well, but before his death he gave his final message: the One Piece is real. Luffy had lost his brother and his crew was scattered across the world, so the Straw Hats made a decision. They would spend 2 years training before finally reuniting. 2 years later, the Straw Hats finally reunited. They were stronger, faster, and ready to enter the most dangerous part of the ocean, the New World. The first major destination was Fishman Island, where they discovered another piece of the mystery surrounding the world's forgotten history. Hundreds of years ago, a mysterious figure named Joy Boy had made a promise that he failed to keep, and somehow the ancient promise was connected to the future of the world. After leaving Fishman Island, the Straw Hats arrived at Punk Hazard, where they formed an unlikely alliance with Trafalgar Law. Their goal was impossible: to take down Kaido, one of the 4 emperors of the sea. That single decision would pull the Straw Hats into a massive conflict involving Doflamingo and an army of artificial devil fruit users, and eventually 2 of the strongest pirates alive. The Alliance's first major target was Doflamingo, a powerful warlord who secretly ruled the kingdoms of Dressrosa. Behind the scenes, Doflamingo controlled the production of artificial devil fruits of Kaido's growing army. Luffy and Law attacked Dressrosa, and after a massive battle, Luffy revealed Gear Forth and finally defeated Doflamingo. His victory changed everything. Several powerful pirates' crews pledged their loyalty to Luffy, creating the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. But the crew's next problem was even bigger. Sanji was taken to Whole Cake Island and forced into a political marriage connected to Big Mom, one of the 4 emperors. So Luffy did what Luffy always does. He invaded the emperor's territory to get his friend back. After destroying Big Mom's wedding plans, surviving her army, and defeating the powerful Charlotte Katakuri, Luffy escaped to Whole Cake Island with Sanji. The whole world could no longer ignore him. Luffy was now being called the 5th Emperor of the Sea, and next he was going after Kaido. The Straw Hats finally arrived in Wano, a closed country controlled by the Shogun Orochi and the Emperor Kaido. For years, Kaido had ruled Wano through fear while building an army of artificial devil fruit users. But the Straw Hats soon learned the truth about Kazuki Oden, a legendary samurai who once sailed with Whitebeard and Goldie Rogers. Oden had traveled to the final island and learned the truth about the world, but after returning to Wano, he was betrayed and killed by Kaido. 20 years later, the rebellion Oden dreamed finally began. Pirates, samurais, and minks launched a massive attack on Kaido's fortress, Nogishima. At the top of the island, Luffy faced Kaido. He lost again, and lost again. But when it appeared Luffy had finally been defeated, his heartbeat suddenly changed. For years, everyone believed Luffy had eaten the Gum Gum fruit, but his true identity was a human fruit, Madonika, a mythical devil fruit connected to the legendary warriors of liberation. Luffy awakened a new transformation. Gear 5, his heartbeat became the drums of liberation, and for the first time, Luffy fought with almost complete freedom. He turned the battlefield into something out of a cartoon, grabbed lightning from the sky, and even transformed into a giant. Luffy defeated Kaido and freed Wano. The kid who once sailed into the ocean alone in a tiny boat was now officially one of the 4 emperors of the sea. By defeating Kaido was only the beginning, because the final race for the One Piece was about to begin. After defeating Kaido, the Straw Hats entered the final saga. On Egghead Island, they met Dr. Vegapunk, the world's greatest scientist, and finally began uncovering answers to mysteries that had existed since the beginning of the story. Vegapunk revealed that the world itself was in danger, and the secrets of the Void Century could completely change everything people believed about the histories. Meanwhile, the race up for the One Piece has officially begun. Blackbeard was making his moves, Shanks was finally entering the race, and the Revolutionary Army was preparing for war. After escaping Egghead, the Straw Hats finally reached Elbaf, the legendary land of the giants. Now, every major power in the world is moving. The Emperors, the Marines, the Revolutionary Army, the world government, and the Straw Hat pirates. After more than 1,000 chapters, the final battle for the truth of the world and the One Piece has begun.